What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to install the Firminator on the Polaris Turbo S. The first thing you're going to want to do is remove the seats. Next thing you're going to want to do is remove all the plastic rivets and the T40 screws from the center console or the driveline tunnel. Make sure you save these because you want to reuse them. I'm going to go ahead and set them in the cup holder. And now it's time to remove the T40s. Go ahead and set those in the cup holder. And now that you got all those removed, we can go ahead and lift this off. Just like that. Now that all the plastic rivets and the screws are out, we're gonna go ahead and remove the actual plastic. So go ahead and remove that from the drive line so it'll slide up. Same thing with the seat belts. And if you have any other accessories, and just go ahead and run the belts through. Also, you're gonna remove the rear. It is gonna be attached to this cigarette lighter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tilt it up like that. Now that we have everything removed from the center and all the plastics off, now disconnect the negative battery cable. Okay, now that you got everything on the inside removed, we're gonna start removing some stuff on the outside, starting with the hood. And then also we're gonna remove these 4 screws, they are T40s as well, from the dash. Then we're going to pop the dash up, just like that. Now that we've got everything removed from the dash and the internals and the seats are out, now we're going to install the Firminator ECU. I'm going to place the Firminator harness right up here, having it up against the side right there, and I'm just going to mark with a drill bit where I'm going to drill. Now that I've got those holes marked, I'm going to drill it out. Drilling it out with a 1/4 inch drill bit. We're going to take the harness and actually go under. You're going to want to tighten it down. Yeah. Depending on the vehicle you have, now that the module is installed, or the ECU, what we're going to do is we're going to install the accessory and ground wire. Now, depending on the vehicle, like I was saying before, is going to depend on which harness you get. On the Mav R, the Can-Ams, it needs a little bit smaller of a harness because the module actually mounts right under the dash. On this one, we need a little bit longer of an extension on the accessory and the ground, which is why this one is significantly longer than the Can-Am one. But that way we can run it, and then you can also loop it wherever you need it. You just have a little extra slack depending on where you're running your box at. Now that we're ready to install the harness itself, from the factory on the firewall, it does have a little rubber grommet, which we're gonna run this through. Just like that. Now we're going to install the accessory and the ground wire to the factory bus bar. When installing the accessory and the ground wire, You want to be positive you are installing the orange wire on the accessory. Reason being is if you do install it on power, it will drain the battery because it'll be running all the time. So I'm gonna hook up the accessory in the ground. Inside the actual Firminator module, there is a breaker in it, but also the accessory circuit on here is fused. So if there's ever an issue, the actual module itself will stop working, not the car. And then I'm gonna go ahead and pull some of that slack back through the backside. Just like so. And then we're gonna tether this up, zip tie it, and then plug it in. Now we're gonna go ahead and plug in our connector. Make sure it snaps when it goes in. This is also the one to the button, so you're gonna wanna make sure that is free up at the top. But now all this extra wire, we're just gonna go ahead and zip tie it up. Just like that. Now that we have the accessory and the ground wire plugged in and we have the rest of the harness all zip tied up, we're gonna go ahead and plug in the button. And then we're just gonna run that under the steering wheel and we're gonna zip tie it. And this gentleman already has a push to talk on his steering wheel, so we're just gonna put it on the opposite side. Only thing you guys wanna be aware of is not having this get tangled up, because that's the last thing you want on the steering wheel. Make sure you have quite a bit of slack, be able to move around, be able to do full turn left and right, and then you should be good. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a zip tie on here too, just around the frame right here, which is under the dash. Like that. Now that we have the button wired under the dash coming up through the steering wheel, we're gonna go ahead and attach it. This one we're gonna attach to the right side. You can attach it to either side. The reason I'm going on the right is because this customer already has a push to talk on the left. So we're gonna go ahead and put this on the right side. Just like this. And he wants it right there. Also, you can put it on the steering wheel itself if you wanted to. There's a few different options on what you can do. This customer specifically wants it here, but it does allow you to put it in a few different spots. But for right now, we're gonna put it right here. And then one thing I'm gonna wanna check once I have that installed is I'm gonna turn full right. Looks good, nothing getting caught up. I'm gonna go full left. Still looks good. Got plenty of slack on there. Go back to the center. And then I'm gonna throw a zip tie just right around the steering neck right there. That'll allow it to free flow. Now that we have the ECU installed, we have the accessory and ground wires installed, we have the button installed on the steering wheel, now we can install the wiring harness. There's gonna be 2 shorter leads and 2 longer leads. The shorter leads go to the front of the car to the 2 front shocks. The longer leads go to the back of the car to the 2 back shocks. Let's get this installed. Going through the factory grommet that's on the firewall like I did plugging in the ground and accessory wire, I'm gonna do the same thing for this plug, but I'm gonna go backwards through it and then plug it in. That way my wires are already ran through. So let's do that. Now that we got the harness ran through, we're gonna go ahead and plug it in. Make sure it snaps. Has plenty of wiggle room in here. Now we're gonna start running the wires throughout the chassis. Make sure that you have the short side and the long side separated. But we're gonna go ahead and do the long side first. Go ahead and drop it down. Running along with the factory harness. We're gonna drop it all the way down. We're gonna throw a zip tie or 2 in there, and then we're gonna run it through, following the factory harness to the back, and then run it to the 2 back shocks. So now that the wires are ran down, we're gonna go ahead and run them through here. following the factory harness. Now that I got the wire, I'm going to pull it all the way through. Don't pull it too tight because you want to make sure there's just a little bit of slack. But just like that, and then I'm going to start running it to the back of the car, following the power and ground cable connected to the battery. We're going to run it along these wires right here, which are the power and ground to the battery that goes up to the bus bar. Making sure you are leaving a little bit of slack on the wires so that they don't get tugged or frayed. Now that we're to the back, we're going to go ahead and zip tie around these rear seatbelt harness brackets, just like that. One to the left side and one to the right side. We're going to go ahead and run this to the passenger side shock. So we're going to put it through here. Pull it through. Just like that. And then we're gonna go ahead and run up the frame right here to get to the shock. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and run this up the back side here, coming up to the shock. We're gonna just go over the top just like that with a little bit of slack. And we're gonna go ahead and unplug the factory plug, plug in the white and blue wire. So that clicks in. Then we're gonna go ahead and add this to the extension. And then we're gonna start to zip tie the harness up at the top and then run it back down. So I'm gonna cut this factory harness zip tie, and I'm gonna run a new zip tie through here, just like so. Then I'm gonna be moving this back a little bit. Right about there. And then go ahead and snip the access off. Like that. And then we have another zip tie up back here that we're going to tighten down a little bit. And then go ahead and snip that as well. Now that you have that plugged in and zip tied up at the top, we're going to go ahead and just go down the frame and throw some zip ties around it to keep the harness from moving. Making sure there's still plenty of slack. Just like that. And then we're going to do the extra little bit of harness. We're going to pull back under the center console. Now that we have the passenger side plugged in, we're going to go ahead and just run the rest of this cord, or the rest of this harness back under. And I'm just going to throw a zip tie around it right here, just like that. Now that we're done with the passenger side, go ahead and repeat the same steps on the driver's side. Now that we have the rear wiring harness installed, we're going to go ahead and do the front shocks. So go ahead and take one side and drop it down to the shock. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the zip tie for the factory plug-in. And then we're going to unplug the factory shock. or the factory plug from the shock. We're gonna go ahead and plug in the blue and white wire. Now that you have the blue and white wire plugged in, you're gonna go ahead and plug in the factory plug to the red-black wire. Now we can go ahead and re-zip tie the factory harness back up to the shock. We're gonna come back up to the top and feed the harness back a little bit. So now that we've got the harness all plugged in, we're gonna leave a little bit of slack and we're gonna zip tie it around the factory harness right here. Again, leaving some slack. Go ahead and get that on there. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull the rest of this slack right here back into the firewall. Like this. And then we're gonna go ahead and wind this up and then zip tie it under here. Now that you guys have the passenger side all done, go ahead and repeat those same steps on the driver's side. The one thing I will show you though is when doing the driver's side harness, you wanna go under the reservoir tank for the coolant. Just make sure you go under that when you're routing the wiring. So how you're gonna wanna do it, just come through here, just like this. And then run it just directly under the tank, just like that. The ECU is installed, the ground and accessory cable is installed, the wiring harness is installed. So now what we're gonna wanna do is reconnect the negative battery cable and then turn on the car just to make sure that the button does work. Now that the key is on and the car is cycled through, you go ahead and push the button. It lights up, should be on for about 5 seconds, and then it'll go off, and we're good to go. Now that the button is good to go, we can go ahead and reassemble everything on the car. So we're gonna start with the front, go and put the dash back on with the 4 T40s. Perfect. Now that the dash is all installed, we're gonna go ahead and throw the center console back in, but before we do that, we're gonna snip all the zip ties that we used to run the wiring harness. Just like that. The back one has to go on first. That. There's going to be a couple of push rivets that need to go in and a couple of screws. So we're going to go ahead and throw the push rivets in. Just like that. And we're going to go ahead and throw in the screws. Now we're going to install the front side of the center console. Remember, we have the seat belts, so go ahead and run those through again before we throw it back on. Just like so. And then also too, had the push to talks. So you want to run through for the rugged radios. Sorry, the rugged radio connectors. Now that this one is on here, we're gonna want to make sure that it goes in its proper spaces. Having the plastic up, or these rubber boots, go ahead and put those back in as well. Seat belt as well. just like that. And now we're ready to put the push rivets in and the screws. And then we're good to throw the screws in. Now that we got that installed, let's go ahead and throw in the seats. And then last but not least, let's install the hood. Well guys, that's it. That is how you install Shock Therapy's Firminator. If you guys have any questions, please call the shop at 623-217-4959. He's gonna keep going. Always working, guys. Always working. Don't have a studio where it's quiet. We gotta be in the shit with everybody, you know what I mean? That's how I like it.
Visit the website. Buy the Firminator. It's the shit.
Money.
Love it. Yes!